Hey everyone, welcome to the Unscrambled Faith podcast. I'm your host, Megan Clark, and we are getting ready, or I am getting ready to wrap up this is the final episode for the Story Through My Eyes series, and I believe this is episode 6, if I'm not mistaken. I think I said 6 the last time, so I apologize for that. But I am certain, at least at this point, that this is the last and final episode, and this is 6. Wow. So as of right now, I think it's a day or two. What's the date? So actually, a day or two. Ooh, time's flying by, y'all. It's actually been 3 days. So 3 days past Christmas Day. Interesting enough, I really truly had plans to record this to get it out there around like Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Don't ask me why. I don't know why I felt like it in my heart. So I'm like, this is the time to record it. And maybe to give a little bit more like a background story, because if you're like, wait a minute, you just said Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, how or where would you be able to record something like that? Well, my Christmas Day, my Christmas Eve looked very different as it has been well, I shouldn't say very different. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it did look different this year compared to, the last couple years. So last couple years, one thing about me when it comes to holidays is that it just depends, like, to know how I feel and whether or not I'm going to show up for the holidays, whether it's with my family, whether it's with my husband's family, really just determines a lot of things. So I've had years past where December was an extremely busy season for me business wise. And typically in like a couple of years ago, it was that I wanted to take a break, whether Thanksgiving or Christmas, and treat that specific day as any other day, not a holiday. I mean, granted, let me pause there. Definitely definitely during the Christmas season, Christmas Eve, celebrating Jesus's birth without a shadow of a doubt. But what I mean by that, aside from celebrating the birth of Jesus, because don't get it twisted, I definitely am still doing that. But aside from that, and attending church service or watching online or whatever that may look like, it's really the like hanging out with like friends or hanging out with family that some years look a little bit different for me. And like I said, really in years past, it depends upon how busy of a holiday season that I had. And if that was the case and I was really busy up until like Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, then normally that's what I would do is I would treat it as, aside from, church, aside from celebrating Jesus' birth, as far as the socialization was concerned, it was really little to no because I just was peopled out and wanted to take just time to rest. They don't, and no need to get on that soapbox because, what the holidays typically bring for people, having to get out multiple, go to multiple places. And every year, specifically in the last 6 years or so, 5, 6 years, every year for me has looked a little bit different than the time before. So, like, for example, last year I got to where I was like, okay, I knew mentally that showing up for like the bigger family gathering was just going to be way too much for me. And so I remember I ended up getting together with some of my husband's family members before Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, was able to not only give them the gift that I personally had picked out for them, but got to have a little bit more personal conversation with them, deeper conversation. And it was just so nice. It was so nice because I was able to have not only one-on-one time with them, but it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel like I was obligated to do it. I wanted to do it, and it was just so enjoyable. And last year I was so grateful that I was able to have that opportunity because it did show me like, okay, I can celebrate the holiday, but in just like my own unique way. Now, I will also preface and say that my immediate family does not celebrate the Christmas holidays. So thankfully, during this time of year, I'm not obligated to necessarily hang out and spend time and go and try to share and decide, which family or which household, I'm going to for the holiday season. Yeah, so, and also to know a little bit about me as well is that when it comes to Thanksgiving in general, for quite some time now, I am not typically one to celebrate Thanksgiving. To each their own. It's just for reasons that I don't think that is really I don't know. I don't really feel like I need to explain it on this specific podcast. But yeah, it just never, for a very long time, it just never came across to me as a holiday that at least the way that I was raised and what I have come to know and how to celebrate it, just didn't want to do that. Didn't really see any reason for it. And for me personally, when it came to Thanksgiving and itself for the month November, the way I am is like, look, if you want to spend time with me, if you want to go to dinner, if, we can get together as a family, we can get together with friends, any other time, any other day, more than happy with that. But same thing with Thanksgiving is that it's been tremendously peaceful for me in years past as a business owner, because that is a day that I take out for myself. Low key, low maintenance, don't go anywhere, stay at home. And take care of myself, mentally. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that, so I don't get too much on that soapbox. But yeah, so segueing into why I didn't record the podcast like I thought I was going to, at least this last episode before the end of the year, my goal was to record idealistically, at least maybe like Christmas Day. However, I was like, you know what? I just didn't feel like it. I was enjoying myself way too much. And going back to where I started, my spicy brain, y'all, with celebrating the holiday this year. So my holiday looked a lot different because my immediate family, they live not too far from where I live. And what was really nice is that, so my immediate family, my parents were actually out of town. And so it was such a blessing because I was able to go over to their home, spend some time by myself. I love to know me as well as to know that I love arts and crafts. I love activities, anything that's like mentally stimulating. So I was excited. I actually had my own kind of like Christmas craft camp, if you want to call it that, because I brought like my coloring book and my markers. What else did I pack? I packed my book that I've been reading. I brought with me, which I am so excited about because I am a third of the way, or a fourth of the way. Oh yeah, I would say a little bit more. Well, yeah, I would say about halfway. Maybe halfway, that's more like it. I've been working on a overdue Lego set of one of the scenes from the TV show Friends, which I am a huge fan of. And I was just so happy to be able to set aside the time over this past week to be able to work on that. That, and then I think that was it. I think that was the only things that I brought with me, I want to say. But I did bring my laptop. I brought my laptop and my ring light. And like I said, I had all the intentions in the world of recording this specific video. But I was really proud of myself because I was enjoying my downtime, my quiet time so much that I didn't want to interrupt that. And I was like, you know what? If the vibe's right, if it feels good, I'll record. Otherwise, I knew that by the end of the week, so today's Sunday, so I knew that at some point before the end of the year that I for sure wanted to record this last episode. And not the last episode for my podcast period, but just the last episode for the series. And hopefully, I'm hoping that you have maybe listened to more than one episode, and if not, that's okay. But for those of y'all that have been with me through this entire month of December that I've been recording for this specific series, I'm so grateful that you've been hanging out with me. This, of course, has been slightly different than what I'm used to doing. So it's a little bit, a little bit is an understatement, but it was way out of my comfort zone. I will say, too, that I'm extremely proud of myself. I knew when I recorded and started this series at the beginning of December that it was very important for me to bring you guys as my audience, my listeners, in on this journey of mine. Because when I started the Unscrambled Faith podcast towards the beginning of this year, I knew that I didn't really know exactly to a T like what I wanted to share and talk about, but my vision was, bringing you guys like along with me through my life, through things that I'm working through, whether in therapy, maybe something that has come up that inspired me, maybe something that's been bothering me. But I always wanted to for sure stay authentic and true and intentional, and in a way of just being more raw and open and honest with my heart and my emotions and my journey and whatever season it is that I was in. And what I really loved is, even looking back at the beginning of this past at the beginning of this year, when I started this whole entire Unscrambled Faith podcast, was that I knew that I needed to, or I not needed to, but I wanted to paint a picture of like, who am I? Where do I come from? What are the things that I've worked through in the past? Kind of bringing you guys, like, painting a picture of me and my background and my personal story. And so then that way I could almost like wrap it up into like present day, present time. And I feel like in a way that's what I was trying to achieve with this series for December, was that I was like, okay, this is a part of my life. This is my reality. I'm filing for divorce. Pretty soon, the next month or two, my divorce will be finalized. This is to me personally, it was a huge part of my life. And not only that, but if I wanted to be still going into the new year, 2026, like if I wanted to be authentic and real and honest and intentional, then that also meant bringing you as my audience once again into the not so pretty parts of my life. And so thus began me walking y'all through day one, of what it was like to get engaged, and painting the picture for you for my wedding day, and bringing y'all through almost like every chapter of my 7-year marriage and what it's like in my life, like as of now. And not only did I know that I wanted to do that for you all as my audience, as you guys that are listening in, or even for my future audience members that will come across this podcast, but more importantly, I needed to do this for myself. I knew that it was important for me. One of the things that I really truly wasn't expecting and ready for, but again, I'm just so proud of myself for doing it, was mentally meditating and going back to like day one, like pretty much like I said, like getting engaged, what it was like to be in my first year of marriage, where my headspace was at, walking you through the day of the wedding, things like that. Then going into segueing to like first year and then second, third year of marriage. And, that's not really something that as of now, 7 years later, that I dwell on, that I think about a lot. And so that bigger picture and walking y'all through the very beginning of everything was truly one of the most humbling, but yet hardest things that I have done in a really long time. To be that raw, to be that honest, that open, but also to be able to say all of this out loud in a space other than my therapist office space, on her couch. Like, for me to be able to share this with someone beyond my best friend, beyond my therapist, and not only that, but to like say it out loud and to, not even like just trust God and trust the process, and not necessarily sure of like who this may, come across to, but trusting, God, that he was going to lead me, in the direction of saying what needed to be said, and doing it in a way that was grace led, that I didn't want to condemn anybody. I didn't want to speak ill of my husband. I didn't want to, dwell on any specific thing within my marriage. But my overall goal and vision was that for anybody, even if it's not divorce, even if there's something that you're coming across, or you're sitting at a crossroads in your life, or maybe you're getting ready to enter to like a new chapter of your life, I wanted you to know that you're not alone, for one. For two, it's important for us to take the time to reflect back on where we've come from, the things. And that was something that I don't always do. I definitely take that for granted. But to be able to take these last couple weeks and at my own pace and my own time, share a lot of my personal story, it has been very healing for myself. Now, one thing that is interesting is that every now and then, like in the past year since doing this podcast, every now and then there will be an episode that at some point while I'm out and about, typically if it's when I'm driving for like, 40 minutes or more, I will listen to one of my podcast episodes. And the only reason I do that every now and then is when that I feel like Holy Spirit takes over, that it's almost like I had this like out of body experience when I'm sharing a word with you, or there's something that's on my heart. And I say out of body because by the time I stop recording, I'm like, whoa, what, what did I just say? Like, what just happened? Because I'm no longer reading a script that I've created for myself, or I'm no longer going by my notes, but I'm going off of like what's on my mind, what's on my heart. And those moments are the times that I would normally in the past go back and listen to the podcast and, listen to whatever it is that I said and then play it back. And then that's an incredible experience. However, I have decided that with this specific series, as of now, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. For different reasons. Now, not to say that maybe, year from now, few months from now, whenever I feel like that Holy Spirit, when the Spirit tells me like in my heart, when I can trust that it's like, okay, you know what? I want to go back and listen. Because who's to say, like, I might do that a year from now, like go back and listen to this entire series and just be like, damn girl, like, damn, you have grown. Look how much you've changed. Now, I know from, like I had said, from the very beginning of doing this series at the beginning of December, when I started it, that there were a couple episodes that before I would hit record, I would kind of say certain things that I want to say like out loud, just to like get it all, get it out there, be like, okay, do I like the way that this sounds? Do I like the way that this is flowing? And, even like during the times when I was actually recording the podcast, certain episodes, I would find myself getting extremely emotional afterwards. And it's just been a very cathartic, I think that's the word, healing, just an overall experience for me. And I hope that you too have gotten something from this, and or maybe perhaps shared it with somebody that their name was placed on your heart and you feel like that may have needed it as well. Where I'm at now, so, let's see, where am I at now? I'm at a place where I believe I have, do I want to say a month and a half? Yeah, we'll say a month and a half. About a month and a half before my divorce is finalized. I am so proud of myself for not only how many times I've been putting myself out there by applying for jobs, because even though I am a business owner, the jobs that I do have as a business owner, they're not, what's the word? Business is not guaranteed. Yes, because I am a business owner with two different businesses, I know that, of course, as a business owner, that like as much work as I put into it, or I really shouldn't say that, but it's like, to a certain point, I can determine the outcome of the success of my business, but that's to a certain point. However, going through a transition like this of needing to get out and get my own place, paying my own bills independently, all of the extra fees that come along with, getting the apartment, putting down money, making sure that I have X amount of months rent, saved up, becoming financially independent, separate from my husband, and then there's all the other things to take into consideration, car insurance, extra bills, etc. So with that being said, I knew that the smartest thing that I could do for myself, even though it has been at least give or take 3 years, I think, since I've actually had a job where it was full-time, even part-time, outside of the house, working like a set amount of hours. It has been several years since I've done that. And so it's been way out of my comfort zone, not only to imagine that, but I know that I don't really have a choice, because for me, the biggest thing for me right now is to continuously, trust God, trust the process, to know that, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And that the smartest thing that I could do for myself right now is to make sure that I am continuously applying myself and applying to places, whether part-time, full-time, to make sure that I am setting myself up for success, to make sure that I'm continuously going in that direction. I will say too at the same time that it's exhausting. It's exhausting applying for jobs. It's so different. I have been very blessed in the last 15 or so years. I mean, almost every single job that I've had, at least in the last, that, I guess that really like 15 plus years, almost every job that I've had, either someone recommended to me or recommended my name to the place of business, and or I ended up just coming across it. Like coming across it, for example, through maybe an ad that was placed, or someone shared something on social media that they were, hiring. Or there's been times where I've been, like one job I landed because I went to, what was it, like one of those like functions where, they have vendors set up, and then they're like a job fair. That's what I was looking for, a job fair. I've gotten a job from a job fair before. But every step along the way, there was either a job that got me another opportunity somewhere else, and or somebody put a good word in for me. And now I guess there were a couple places that I did look, but it wasn't to the extent of how exhausting this is. But I will say, going back to the fact that I am continuously proud of myself for taking it one day at a time, not giving up on myself, even though as daunting as it is to continuously edit and update my resume. Even like creating the resume in itself was something that I had to get over the mental block, because it had been quite a while since I had created a resume. And I tell y'all what, when there's a gap between the time that you've had one versus when you need to do it again, it's constantly changing. What they're needing or wanting information wise, it's constantly changing. And that was something that I knew I had to look into first. So then once I got that done, then there's the fact of like applying to places that what really throws me off is they not only ask you to upload your resume, but then you're forced to fill in the blanks and answer questions that pretty much they're the exact same information that you put on your resume, but they're wanting you to either type it up yourself and or choose like drop down menus. That drives me insane. And I'm like, and I'm sometimes I feel like I age myself, but at the same time I'm like, am I really? Because I'm like, can't we, what, like, why is it that we are not as advanced at this point with applying online to where it's like Dropbox or attach a file, like wherever you want to do it, like your resume, your cover letter, whatever it is that they're asking for you, but like leaving it at just that. Like I understand if there's like a personality test, something of that stature. However, when we have sites that are like, okay, upload your resume, but then we're going to ask you to like double time and then manually fill out everything that you already have on your resume, that part I just can't seem to wrap my mind around. No, yeah. So another soapbox, but that's where I'm at with that, is that, I'm just proud of myself for continuously, looking at the path ahead, focusing on the path ahead, to know that, to not get down on myself in a way of like, okay, I haven't heard from anybody that I'm applying for, but instead flip the script. And instead I'm telling myself, I'm proud of myself for applying to these specific spots, to the for these positions, to put myself out there, to continuously just take it. And I will tell y'all, even though as much as I want to go crazy and apply to like several places a day, because of the places that I'm applying to, with them asking as much as they're with asking as much information as what they're needing from me, and especially coming from somebody like myself that is neurospicy brain, y'all, it's just a lot. And I'm really proud of myself because, taking it like a couple days at a time or a day at a time, as much as it would be easier for me to do anything else, to know like if, like I had somebody recently that was a good friend of mine, she reached out to me and she's like, kind of like what I was saying earlier, in the last 15 years, like I've had somebody that's like, hey, this business is, looking to hire, this is where you can go to apply for it. There have been times when I have been blessed in the last month or two that somebody has come to me and said something of that matter, like something similar to me. And, it never feels that it's in a time, like in a headspace where I'm either like physically tired, mentally tired, drained, whatever the case may be. And the last thing that I want to do is something like this. But I know that in my heart, I have to keep in mind what my future goals are. That I know that going into this new year, that time is of the essence for one. That there's like this timer that's been set, and I have mentally and physically like set goals for myself where it's like, okay, when my divorce is finalized, the last thing that I want for myself is to not have like a stable job in place, to not have a plan. So that's what I've talked about in the last couple of episodes, where a little bit at a time I have been researching and making plans and making lists, and soon it'll actually more or less going into, because now we're actually getting ready to segue into January. So January for me is going to look like, okay, let me, book the appointments to look around at the apartment complexes, to talk to, whoever it is, management staff wise, that's over these places that I'm wanting to possibly move into, and, to kind of start that process. And now that I, have been applying to jobs, it's really just been taking it in stride, but also not taking advantage, or I guess I should say I was taking advantage of the time in a way of maximizing my time and just making sure that I'm being the most productive that I can be, with the time that's been given to me. But yeah, so that's where I'm at now is, doing the hard things, like I said. And, the plus side is that with not having children, having fur babies, but not having like human children, I'm not as obligated to stay in one location. So that has been a big perk of when I've been applying to different places to work, is that I can say, I am open to moving and I am open to traveling. So that has helped tremendously, and not limiting me in a way of where I'm applying to, be considered for. But I guess really too, that's also answering the next question, is like, what's next? What's next for me going into 2026 is figuring out where I'm going to be moving to. Just putting good faith, and again, just trusting God, that God has a whole, every single one of us, he has a story written for us. He has a plan for each of us. Taking it in strides, like it's kind of like finding a balance between, taking my life like one day at a time, but then also just making sure that I'm also holding on to like future goals, future plans, whether it's setting new things. This, like, I got some really great things during the holidays from like friends and family members, right? And or maybe like just because, or my birthday even. So between like September and now, there's been things that have been given to me that I'm really proud of myself, because I've set aside, and that's going into like my new apartment. That it's going to be something that's like, it's all mine, it's brand new, so that way I can enjoy it in that space. And I think I did share this, but one of the things that I was happy that I did for myself was a friend of mine. I think I did share this, but it's okay. I'll just repeat the story, but not going like too crazy, because again, my budget is extremely tight, but also finding ways here and there to, if I have it, if the financial, financially I can afford so, to find, little small moments of things that I can maybe be like, oh, this is going in my new space. So like, for example, two things that I have now, one of them being, there's like a really cute, small, kind of like almost the size of my palm, painting that I purchased. My friend and I, a couple weeks ago, went to a holiday like Christmas market that one of my friends hosted in her home. And it was so much fun. And even though my budget was really tight, I ended up finding this really talented vendor. She had painted on Canva, and it, like I said, it was this petite Canva, nothing, too big or extravagant, but it was something that was like, it was all mine. The personality of what she had created, what was on this Canva print, was so beautiful, so incredible. And I'm excited because instead of me finding a space here in the house that I'm currently living in to, find somewhere to put it, I put it aside in my stash that I have. And I'm like, you know what? No, this is all mine. This is going in the space of like where I move into. And the same thing with a week ago, I cashed in a certificate that I had for a painting class that I originally had got for my birthday. or I originally purchased for myself for my birthday. And I ended up cashing it in, and I was so glad that everything works out for a reason, because the painting class that I ended up doing was a Christmas tree. And if you can't tell if you're watching the video on YouTube, my shirt that I have on right now is sparkly with sequins. It does say Merry and Bright, but I literally do love how bright the shirt is and how fun and colorful it is. So when I did this class and we painted this holiday tree, not only was it a neon Christmas tree, but your girl got to put glitter and jewels on the painting as well. I'm very excited about that. In fact, same thing. I normally would have put it up in my office by now because I've had it for about a week or so, but I decided same thing. I'm going to wait until I move into my new space. I could care less if it's February, March. It's still hanging up somewhere in my space, my new space. But I absolutely love it. But yeah, so that's pretty much what's next. I'm also planning on continuously doing this podcast. I originally was playing around with whether or not I was going to rebrand and change the name from Unscrambled Faith, but I've decided that Unscrambled Faith fits me. It fits my story, what I want to share, the aesthetic, everything so far about my life. It just still fits. It still makes sense. So I'm keeping to the Unscrambled Faith name. But just this series in itself, story, through my eyes, will conclude, at the end of December. So I'm excited to see what's to come for January. When I look back at the beginning of this series, I'm like I said, I keep saying it over and over, but I'm just incredibly proud of myself. I'm so glad that I did this. And one part that I would say that truly surprised me the most was how much, I already knew that I was at a peaceful place within my life and in my heart and with this journey that I've been on, but I wasn't really, I knew I was at peace, but it was just interesting, just really truly like saying everything out loud and to be like, wow, I experienced all that. And there were times when it felt like I was talking about a whole different person, which in a way I was, because the person that I was a few years ago plus is definitely not the person that I am now. And I'm looking forward to this new year. I'm looking forward to the fact that I've come full circle in a way of where I wanted to go, where I wanted to be, which was spiritually, faithfully, emotionally healed. That internally, I am at rest. I am at peace. I absolutely love that, because I know that the next step for me going into this new year is now to pick back up where I left and where I dropped off with my physical health. That was something I knew that I wanted to work through and process and get to a healthy point where I'm mentally, and again, just mentally and spiritually feeling better, emotionally feeling better. I knew that I really wanted to, I didn't put a timeline on it for myself. Honestly, for the time that I've been through therapy and 4+ years, that has been the overall process and theme was, working through all of that. And I knew that I wanted to make sure that I took care of that and I gave that more attention and love. So then that way I can now get to a space where I can focus more on the physical part of me. And I'm excited for that journey in itself. I didn't realize that I would still grieve what could have been in my marriage. There were a couple of things along the way that I've shared in this series that I thought I had really truly put behind me. And again, just readdressing and opening up old wounds. And, I was talking to my best friend the other day and I told her, I said, thus beginning this journey through the series, there's been many moments with being in this house that I can picture myself at one time or another in different spaces of this house when not so pretty things were happening. And, little glimpses of oh gosh, I remember, what I said, or, how I felt. And even just from the physical part of like what it looked like for me, like, was I sprawled down on the ground crying? Was I sitting on the floor crying? Was I screaming? Was I, yelling at God, not understanding like what was going on, in my marriage? Or, I even honestly thought about that today while I was, watching the church service online. There was a specific song, and I can't remember what it was called right now, but there was a song that I was listening to that they were performing during the worship time. And the lyrics of the song, basically talks about, in a way of like summing up, that God is there for us, over and over and over again, through all of our hardships, through all of our trials, everything that we've been through. God is the one thing that remains steady, that remains constant, that we can lean on and depend on to, not waver. And that was something that I ultimately pictured was, and I just remember having this incredibly healing, emotional, crying, time, feeling all the things during the song this morning as I was worshiping, because I kept picturing all the different times that I've listened to the church service, and over the last couple of years, if not longer, and all of the hardships, all of the hard things that I brought to God, especially specifically during like the worship time, because I love singing and I love worshiping. And I pictured the time that from the very beginning of whenever we were having a hard time conceiving, and crying out to God, not understanding, why not me, why is it not in the cards for me? I don't understand. I want a family, I want to be a mom, everyone else around me is being a mom. God, why are you punishing me? I remember having that conversation, and yelling and getting so frustrated with God. And then thus began like the next chapter in my life, where then it was like bringing it to God, and again through worship music and the worship service, of the struggle with not understanding, why I can't help my husband through his sobriety journey, feeling all alone in that, feeling helpless, not knowing like what to say or do, or again like what my part in all of that was, and just knowing that I did not have any, letting go and not having the control over something like that, and how scary that was. And then flash forward to again, worshiping through the Sunday church service, and bringing it to God of, God, you've brought me thus far, you brought us thus far in our marriage, why are things not getting any better? Why are they just seem like they're just getting harder and harder? And, why can't I catch my breath? And, just over and over again. And it was just so incredibly beautiful and healing to be in that moment this morning, listening to that specific song, and to have this moment of, like I said, really just that, just healing and peace. And once again, just God reminding me that, you're right where you need to be, that I'm on the path that I need to be on, that I know that I continuously can, trust him and lean on him, and that all the things that I'm looking for in my significant other, that he provides for me time and time again. One of the things that I've learned about myself through all of this is that I'm stronger than I believe to be myself to be most of the time. That it's not necessarily that I'm numb to everything that I went through over the last couple years, but it's not numb, it's really peace. It's having this finalization of knowing who I am, what I want, and where I'm going, and being so self-assured by that. Not owing anybody an explanation, not needing to apologize for anything at this point, for me to have an understanding. And one thing that I wish I would have wrote it down, but I think I can remember it for the post part, because I made notes on my phone this morning, and I just am now thinking about that, but it's okay, because I can remember for the most part the notes that I made. One of the biggest key takeaways that I have learned through being married over the last 7 years, and that I ultimately think that it's important for anybody, whether married or not, in a relationship or a partnership, or if you're considering getting married or considering getting out there and dating somebody seriously, the one thing that I can say that is utmost important that I have learned the hard way for myself is that ultimately we have to learn how to love ourselves first. And the reason why we have to learn what it looks like to love ourselves first is because if you don't, what happens when you get into a relationship, a partnership with somebody, is that you put these high, unrealistic expectations on your partner in a way of then wanting them to fill this void that you otherwise have because you don't love yourself. And if you don't learn if you don't learn what it looks like to love yourself first and foremost, you're setting yourself up for so much more of a complicated, it just makes things harder because you're putting these unrealistic expectations on your partner, on your spouse, and expecting them in a way of filling that void that you're otherwise feeling less than, that you're feeling empty, that you don't feel worthy. And with you putting these unrealistic expectations on them, they feel this immense pressure because you're setting them up for failure, ultimately. Instead of accepting your partner or spouse for who they are, because that to me is one of the most beautiful concepts, is getting to a place where you're on a journey of loving yourself, getting to know yourself. Because when you begin the process and you get to a place where you do ultimately love yourself, then you can be like, okay, now I can teach you, I can walk you through how to love me, how to show up for me, what that looks like. Instead of expecting them otherwise to build you up all the time. Now, of course, that's not to say that, it is important for us to lean on one another, to encourage one another, to be, in a way, each other's cheerleader, but not all the time. That to me is where it's so important for us. And even if you're not at a place in your life where you're like, you know what, I don't honestly think I love myself, I will be the first to say that there was a tremendous amount of time, because now I'm on a journey of learning how continuously to show up for myself and how to provide that love for myself, because that was something that I was not taught growing up. That was not something that I brought into relationships, let alone my marriage. And what I did in return was turn to those that I was either intimately involved with, or those that I was dating, or even in my own marriage, and expecting that other person, because I didn't love myself and I had this empty void, I was continuously looking to them to otherwise fill that void, whether it was through attention, whether it was through their time, whether it was through their energy. And that can take a lot out of a person, especially if you go into a partnership with somebody that otherwise they are struggling through the same thing, that they are not sure of who they are, or they're trying to find themselves, or they don't love themselves either, and they're in the struggle with that. But then you put this immense amount of pressure on them that you're not showing your independence, that you're dependent on them for all things, whether it's their love, their time, their energy. There has to be this yin and yang. There has to be this shared experience between you two, that when your spouse is going through a difficult season, or they're having a bad day, that then you're able to step up and step in and provide the space for them where they do feel loved, where they do feel seen, where they do feel nurtured. But at the same time, when you are going through that, ultimately what we want, what we look for and long for, is then for our other person, our significant other, to step in and then reciprocate and do the same thing. And one of the things that I remember I also made a note of this morning that was so important, was that when you get to a space or a place in the season of your life where you're like, okay, I'm on this journey of loving myself. One thing that's so important, especially if you're going through a season of maybe, again, you're looking for your person that you want to settle down with, or maybe perhaps, you're single and you're you're looking for somebody, that you want to make a connection with. You're just, you're dating, whatever the case may be. One of the things that's so important during the season of waiting is to keep in mind or to ask yourself, am I the type of person that would I date me? Would I show it for me? And if you can't say yes to that, then that's where you want to start looking inwards and be like, okay, what are the things that I can start working on to make sure that I'm the best version of myself for whenever God does otherwise put somebody into my life that God's wanting to, be with me, that we're supposed to be, together for the rest of our lives. I mean, isn't that a beautiful thing to think about, is that when we do cross paths with somebody that we're supposed to spend the rest of our lives with, or someone that otherwise, God puts in our past, that why would you not want to be like, or strive and work towards the best version of yourself? I just thought that was so beautiful to keep in mind. My faith journey has been very interesting during this time, especially if we talk about the last like 4+ years, but specifically in this last year, I'll speak into that. So this last year, like 2025, faith has definitely been the one thing. My relationship with God and my faith in itself has looked very different as it's been in years past. Faith for me has wavered, but at the same time, it's also grounded me in a way of, okay, I know the realistic steps that I need to take to do something to keep propelling forward, but at the same time, keeping my faith in a way that's helping me stay grounded to know that ultimately at the end of the day, I can trust that God, once again, that God has a path and a plan for me to continuously, stay true to Him, stay steady, and to know that to lean in more towards not only what God's telling me, but what is my heart telling me? What is my gut telling me? Checking it with myself internally to make sure that everything is aligned, especially when I'm making tougher decisions. Walking by faith in itself, is that when you're having a day that, you just don't know, like it just feels like everything's out of control. Like you just, you can't tell up from down, left from right. Maybe you're even going through a season of life where you're just like, you know what, I just buckled up and we're riding this out and it's a vibe. We're just going to let it ride. If that's the case, again, walking by faith, not by sight, is the fact that we cannot predict what tomorrow brings. God is the only one at the end of the day that truly knows what our tomorrow brings. But walking by faith is trusting that God's got you exactly where you're at. That even when you feel unsteady, even when you feel like your world is upside down, to know that God is keeping you afloat, that He has got your back, that He is beside you, that you're never alone. Even during the times when you feel like you are, He has never left your side. He's never going to give up on you. You can choose to give up on yourself, but God is never going to give up on you. That to me is the one person that we can always count on, that is going to be with us no matter what decisions we make, no matter what path we take. God is always going to bring us back to the core, and that in itself can always bring you back to like your faith, and just making sure that, or not making sure, but just, that's going to bring you back to, anytime that you're just like, because I will say, even for myself, especially now that the time is getting closer and closer to when my divorce will be finalized, knowing that there's this immense amount of pressure, it almost feels like on my shoulders, of decisions that I need to make, that the things that are changing, or that a lot of this falls on me, the schedules that I have to make, or appointments that I have to do, and finalizing things or changing things. And that in itself can just feel so overwhelming, especially because, that is not even a part of the real world. That's things that are happening in my personal life with me personally. But as we all know, the world just keeps turning, right? So I still have to show up in my businesses. I have a team, that looks to me for guidance and mentorship. I have friends that I want to make sure that I take the time to check in with. I have family members that I'm connecting with. I have, a household to still run, despite everything that's going on and all the things. Oh, and in the meantime, also, of course, finding time for myself, making sure that I'm showing up for myself mentally and spiritually and physically. But, just, whew, taking deep breaths when needed, giving it all to God. When it feels so heavy, when it feels like it's weighing down on us, we can barely catch our breath. Just giving it to God. Because here's the thing, is that as much as we want to go around it, we need to go through it. No matter what it is that you're walking through, no matter what season of life, no matter what chapter you're in right now, we have to go through it. It's better to go through it in the long run than to try to weasel our way around it and try to get a shortcut through our life. Your future self will thank you for that. If you're in a season in your life where you're feeling guilty for wanting peace, I think the easy way out to say that would be don't feel guilty. But that's too easy, right? Like, that's too easy. Like, don't feel guilty. I think it's important for, if you are at a place in your life where you're feeling guilty for choosing peace, I think it's important first and foremost to work through, or whether you're writing it down or processing it out loud, or whatever the case may be, is asking yourself why. Why is it that you're wanting the peace? What has led you up into this point thus far for wanting peace? And also ask yourself, when I do choose peace, is it going to be well worth the consequences? What I mean by that is choosing peace for yourself in your life, to know that there are going to be others, because you are disrupting the constant flow, the comfortableness of people around you, that it's not going to disrupt your life. You choosing peace for yourself is going to disrupt everybody else's. Because when you choose something for yourself, and it goes against everything else that somebody else wants, somebody's going to fight back for that. And you have to decide for yourself, how important is having peace in my life? What does it mean for me to wake up tomorrow to know that I'm at peace? That the decision that I'm making is going to bring peace and breathe a fresh breath of life into my life. One of the things that I recently talked about with one of my good friends the other night, and I was just so glad that we had this conversation, because one of the things that I said out loud was, there have been people in my life that God has intervened and put space between myself and these other individuals. And I knew that I had to walk away and create space between certain people in my life, because they otherwise wanted the version of myself that was not peaceful, that they expected me to stay the same, and this version of myself that they once knew. But I know that in my heart, in my spirit, I'm not that person anymore. And again, that goes back to me saying that I don't owe anyone an explanation, just like you don't owe anyone an explanation. If you're choosing peace over chaos in your life, you do not owe anyone an explanation as to why you're choosing peace. But like I said, to choose peace is to wake up every day and to stand on the ground, stand on the decision, to know and to remind yourself, why am I choosing peace over chaos? That is what you have to constantly, that's what I have to constantly remind myself and hold on to, is the why. Why am I choosing peace? I go back and reflect back on the alternative of like what life was like before I chose peace. Or otherwise, if I decided to not choose peace over chaos, what would my life continuously look like? And that's something that I have to remind myself almost daily, especially when I do have outliers, individuals that are either attempting to disrupt that peace or just the enemy in itself has certain ways of trying to like disrupt mentally what we are working so hard, to work towards and to stay like peace. The enemy, like those two things do not go hand in hand, y'all. So it just know, like if you, like I said, that to me is the most important thing. Choosing peace over chaos and reminding yourself and asking yourself, why am I choosing peace? And if I don't choose peace over chaos, what will my life in the future continuously look like if I otherwise don't decide this for myself? If do I define love differently than I once did? Ooh, that's an interesting question. I will say that first and foremost, I still do very much love my husband. And one of the hardest things and the toughest decisions that I've had to make is to continuously continue with filing for divorce. It's definitely one of the hardest decisions that I've had to make, but at the same time, it's one of the best decisions that I could make for myself. And again, for my sense of peace, for my future self. Love for me is complicated. And I say complicated because I can't think of just one thing, when it comes to how I define love. There's so many different layers that I think goes in towards love in itself. Different layers of trust. I mean, certain words that come to mind when I think of love is trust, consistency, faith, spirituality, encouragement. Yeah, there's just so many layers, and the word love, there's so much more depth to it in a way that you like. I heard for so long before I even got married, before I got engaged, I heard for so long that they say that like when you settle down and when you get married, life changes, your perspective changes, the dynamic between you and your person that you were once dating or once engaged to, all of that shifts, all of that changes. And that's something that I was talking to my best friend the other night, and I asked her, I said, I'm very interested in like the scientific research with the brain, like what happens, what takes place when somebody goes from either dating and or engaged and then married. And and I'm very curious and fascinated by like how the brain alternates and like changes through the course of time, like not only like the scientific part of the brain changing, but also just I guess the mental part as well, because things do shift, things do change. And I will say that I don't regret getting married. There are a lot of things that I'm taking with me into this new year. Things that I've learned truly, honestly, hands down, learned about myself that I otherwise never ever would have thought that I've been given the opportunity to do so. I appreciate that I have more of an understanding and self assurance of not only who I am outside of marriage, but who I am as a spouse, as a significant other, but also tuning in more to like what it is that I want out of a spouse. What are the expectations that I have? What is it that, or what is it also that I bring to the table? And continuously to know that, going into this new year, that I really want to focus and continuously focusing on myself and stepping more into the light of my faith, my walk with God. Still, staying connected in with not only my church service that I love listening to, but also, taking more time to talk with God and walk with God and lean into my friends that I'm still close with even to now, and to, embrace. And I'm excited for, honestly, like what's to come into this new year. I'm excited for the fact that I am more present than ever, that I'm not really as concerned for what's to come other than the decisions that I really do have to make over the next couple of months. But other than that, I know in my heart, in my soul, that God's got me every step of the way, that I'm leaning in and continuously leaning in and trusting that He has a path for me, just like He has a path for you as well. And that as long as we show up for ourselves every single day. And one of the things that I will say too, before we wrap all this up, is that one of the things I heard even in the church message today that I just absolutely loved was that it's so important for us to remain steady, not only in our faith, but to find joy in our everyday lives, and to make sure that we're not walking with entitlement, that we stay humble, that we continuously. One of the things that was just like this aha that is just so good that they talked about in today's church message was how often do we pass up the gift giver, God, and how often do we continuously walk past the gift giver and go straight to the gift, like we skip over the gift giver. And that to me has been ultimately one of the biggest things that has been shown in my life thus far, specifically this last year, is slowing down, appreciating the things at face value that God has given me into my life. And when I'm praying and when I'm asking for guidance, when I'm asking for encouragement, or there are things that I am wanting to be blessed with in my life, to know that and to remind myself that God is answering prayers, but He's not always going to answer our prayers in a way that we want them to be answered. And to look at the bigger picture and not stay so focused and like honed in on what we're wanting, because God knows and will place us exactly where we need to be, and He'll always make sure and put the right people in your path for who needs to be there at that given time. I am just so humbled by this month, this series. I've learned a lot about myself, and I hope that if you too have been with me through this entire month and listened and tuned into the series, and if not, I encourage you to go back and start from the beginning. But I too hope, just as much as I have, that there's something that you maybe have learned about yourself. Maybe there was a certain something that I said, or one of the episodes during the series that you either connected with, or maybe somebody else came to mind that you're like, I need to share this with them. But all the same, I'm just so grateful. I'm so thankful that you have been here with me every step of the way. I'm so excited for what's to come in the 2026 new year. I'm very excited to pick this podcast back up and continuously just talk about how we can unscramble our faith. And I'm so ready to take y'all into the next phase of my life and what that looks like. But I'm just so grateful. Thank you guys so much for listening in. Whether you're sharing an episode with somebody, whether you have subscribed on YouTube, whether you have given me a great review, whatever the case may be, just the fact that you're listening to me right now, I'm just so thankful. I hope you have an incredible, safe week going into the new year. I can't wait to see, and talk about what's to come. Who knows, but we're putting it in God's hands. But thank y'all so much for hanging out with me. Again, I'm your host, Megan Clark. And as always, going into the new year, don't forget to unscramble your faith and find clarity in the chaos.